2nd of June 1994, RAF Chinook helicopter Zulu Delta 576 crashed into the Mull of Kintyre.
Missing after a helicopter crashed in the west of Scotland. It hit a hill in thick fog. An eyewitness reported hearing a loud explosion and seeing a fireball.
On board were 25 passengers and 4 crew. All were killed in the crash. This was the Royal Air Force's worst peacetime disaster, but it was also a disaster for the British government. The 25 passengers who died were almost the entire staff of the UK's Northern Ireland Secret Service. In Britain, we have 2 secret services. We have MI6, who is the equivalent of the CIA, the James Bond agency who deals with foreign affairs, and MI5, who deal with internal security and is the equivalent of the FBI. In the 90s, the so-called Troubles in Northern Ireland were taking place, where Catholics and Protestants were fighting each other. The UK government was particularly worried by the IRA, the Irish Republican Army, who had a successful bombing campaign on mainland Britain. So they had a security office in Belfast. But this helicopter crash wiped out their entire team. My family connection to this tragic accident was, at the time, my father was the most senior civil servant in the Argyll area, and although he wasn't directly in part of the accident investigation and certainly didn't work for the RAF, he was liaison between the different agencies. As his son, I've seen various emotional reactions from my father, but I've never seen the man so upset. He was extremely sad, but he also showed an emotion which was perplexing. He was angry, and today I'm going to explain why he was angry and his theory of what really happened. Now, I certainly don't want to undermine the official inquiry. I think they did a lot of work. Initially, pilots were blamed, and then the blame got moved over to Boeing, who made the Chinook helicopter, and the story is very complex. But I think my father's local knowledge and local take on what happened that tragic day is interesting. The Chinook helicopter departed late afternoon that day under VFR, or Visual Flight Rules, en route from Belfast to Inverness in Scotland. On board were the entire senior staff of the British Northern Ireland Security Services. So what angered my father? Well, I'd like to tell you today what the security services were really doing. What he saw was a flagrant waste of UK taxpayers' money to carry an entire team on a helicopter for an outing. He also understands why you don't put everybody on the same aircraft. Something else you need to know about my father is that he was a keen hill walker and knew the lay of the land of that part of the Mull of Kintyre like the back of his hand. So let me tell you now my father's theory about what could have confused the pilots that fateful day. Under VFR, or visual flight rules, often pilots fly by visual reporting points and overhead other airports. And also you want to cut down your over sea or large lake crossing time. Helicopters don't do so well on water, but can land pretty well anywhere on land. They set out from Northern Ireland and purposely chose the shortest crossing point between Ireland and Scotland, and that only 12 miles. In this picture you can see in the distance Northern Ireland. They also chose the Mull of Kintyre Lighthouse as a VRP, or visual reporting point. And after their planned flight over the lighthouse, it was a short hop overhead RAF Machrihanish, which could be a potential fuel stop en route to Inverness. The Mull of Kintyre, which is the bottom of the Kintyre Peninsula, is rather unique. It has steep cliffs, but then behind it, steeply rising ground. Originally this was an island, and then it drops down into the plain where RAF Machrihanish is, and then the rest of the peninsula. So this bottom part, the Mull of Kintyre, is quite hilly. The lighthouse was not built on the top, and in fact is in two parts. Nearer the sea is a very distinctive building, which is the foghorn. And then above it is the lighthouse, and then the high ground continues. In my father's humble opinion, not knowing that the lighthouse was not on the top of the Mull of Kintyre, by heading towards the visual reporting point of either the lower foghorn or the lighthouse, they just didn't know in mist and cloud that the hills behind the lighthouse continue to rise steeply, and that's where the aircraft sadly ended up. The crash investigators discovered that the Chinook hit the ground at full speed while climbing, an initial impact, and then it scooted up the hill, sadly killing everybody on board. Today I'm not going to go into the full results of the inquiry, but initially both the pilots were blamed. But new evidence appeared when it was discovered that Boeing in their Wilmington Chinook plant had a problem with this type of Chinook helicopter, and Textron, Lycoming, who make a FADEC system for the engine controls, had a software error. The Chinook had no black box, and there's no evidence to say that it had a technical problem either with its engines or with its engine management system. But this new evidence raised enough doubts to clear the pilots from absolute blame. Today there's a chilling memorial to the crash just above the lighthouse. Worth visiting and devastating. So thanks everybody for watching yesterday's episode about RAF Machrihanish and how it's actually a secret base. I have to tell you, I got a lot of positive comments, lots of positive comments about the music, and it's really fabulous. But I got two mysterious messages. They rubbished my theory and ended with something quite personal about my father, some kind of inside knowledge about his job. And both the messages were pretty well identical from people I don't know. So I'm assuming that this is the UK government contacting me and telling me to back off. Who knows? But this isn't the end of the story. Today was the tragic Chinook helicopter crash, which really is part of my family's history. But we're not done yet. Tomorrow we're going to return to Machrihanish, the secret Air Force base, the Area 51 of the UK, and reveal 2 new secrets. As a teaser, I'm going to mention 2 things. 1, millions invested into a closed Air Force base, and 2, an alternative cruise missile launch area. See you tomorrow, because the truth is out there.